The 1950s in Australia were a world away from today, not just in technology or fashion, but in the small, everyday things that shaped how people lived, connected, and made sense of the world around them. These weren't the big historical moments you read about in textbooks. They were the quiet rituals, the ordinary objects, the forgotten habits that made life what it was. Most of these things have vanished so completely that younger Australians wouldn't even recognize them. This is about 10 forgotten things from 1950s Australia that we will never get back. Things that mattered deeply then and exist only in memory now. Let's remember what's been forgotten. Number 1, the belief that your children's lives would be easier. And here's the thing that defined 1950s Australia more than any object or ritual. The belief that each generation would have it easier than the last. Parents worked hard, saved carefully, and genuinely believed their children would have better lives, better opportunities, better prospects. That wasn't naive optimism, it was lived experience. Things were getting better. Homes were becoming more affordable, education was expanding, medical care was improving, and the future looked bright. That belief shaped everything: how parents sacrificed, how they planned, how they raised their kids. It created a sense of purpose and hope that permeated society. Today, that belief has eroded. Many Australians worry their children will struggle more, not less. Housing is less affordable, job security is weaker, and the optimism that defined the 50s has been replaced by anxiety. The loss of that fundamental belief that tomorrow will be better than today, it's perhaps the saddest forgotten thing from 1950s Australia. It was the foundation of everything else, and without it, even the material improvements we've gained feel hollow. Number 2, the weekly bath night ritual. Daily showers weren't the norm in 1950s Australia, they couldn't be. Hot water was limited, often heated in a copper or a small tank, and bathing every day was considered wasteful and unnecessary. Most families had a designated bath night, usually once or twice a week. You'd heat the water, fill the tub, and the family would take turns youngest to oldest, everyone using the same water with a bit of hot added between bathers. Hair was washed once a week, you'd scrub thoroughly, and that bath was an event, not a daily routine. The rest of the week, you'd wash at the sink, a quick face and hands in the morning, a washcloth for a body wipe before bed. It sounds unhygienic now, but it was normal then, dictated by practicality and resources. When hot water systems improved and showers became standard, daily washing became the norm. That weekly bath night ritual, the whole family rotating through one tub of water, the careful conservation of hot water, it's been completely forgotten, replaced by the expectation of unlimited hot water on demand. Number 3, the housekeeper for middle-class families. In 1950s Australia, it wasn't uncommon for even modest middle-class families to employ a part-time housekeeper or cleaning lady. She'd come once or twice a week, do the heavy cleaning, help with laundry, and sometimes cook. It wasn't about wealth, it was about the amount of physical labor required to run a household without modern appliances. Washing was brutal, cleaning was endless, and help was affordable because wages were low. The housekeeper became part of the family rhythm, knew your routines, and was trusted. As labor-saving devices, washing machines, vacuum cleaners, dishwashers became common and affordable, and as women's wages rose, employing household help became less common and then almost non-existent for average families. That relationship, that presence of a housekeeper as part of weekly life for ordinary families, has been completely forgotten. It speaks to a different economy, a different social structure, and a different understanding of domestic labor. Number 4, the tin rattling for street collections. In the 1950s, community fundraising happened face-to-face. Someone would stand on a busy street corner or outside the post office with a collection tin, rattling it to catch attention, raising money for the local hospital, the surf club, the returned soldiers, the church. It was direct, personal, and visible. You'd drop your coins in, hear them clink, and know exactly what you were supporting. People rattled tins at football matches, outside shops, at train stations. It was grassroots fundraising that relied on community goodwill and the tangible act of giving. When organised charities with professional fundraising took over, the amateur tin rattlers disappeared. Street collections became regulated, required permits, and eventually moved largely online. That personal connection, looking someone in the eye, dropping coins in their tin, being part of a visible community effort, it's gone. Number 5. The Iceman and the icebox. Before electric refrigerators became standard, Australian homes kept food cold with iceboxes, insulated cabinets that held a large block of ice. And the ice came from the Iceman, who delivered it door to door from a horse-drawn cart or truck. He'd use giant tongs to carry blocks of ice into your house, sliding them into the top of the icebox. As the ice melted, you'd empty the drip tray underneath. The Iceman came several times a week, knew every household's needs, and kids would beg him for ice chips to suck on hot days. It was a system that worked, but it required constant maintenance, regular deliveries, and acceptance that food wouldn't keep as long. When electric fridges became affordable in the late 50s and early 60s, the Iceman became redundant almost immediately. The profession vanished, the iceboxes were thrown out, and a whole daily ritual, the Iceman's arrival, the cold drip tray, the careful management of perishables disappeared from Australian life. Number 6. The local cobbler who repaired every shoe. Shoes in the 1950s were expensive, and when they wore out, you didn't throw them away, you took them to the cobbler. Every town had one, usually a small shop smelling of leather and glue, where an old bloke would resole, reheel, and repair shoes that had miles of walking left in them. He'd sit at his workbench surrounded by tools, leather scraps, and tins of nails, and he'd rebuild your shoes for a fraction of the cost of new ones. You'd drop them off, pick them up a few days later, and they'd be good as new. The cobbler knew his craft, took pride in his work, and made things last. When cheap imported shoes flooded the market and disposable culture took hold, cobblers started closing down. Repairing became more expensive than replacing, and the skills died out. Do you remember the smell of a cobbler's shop, or the satisfaction of getting your favorite shoes back, restored, and ready for another year? That culture of repair, of making things last, it's been lost. Number 7. The Hessian bag as universal tool. Hessian bags, rough and woven from jute, were everywhere in 1950s Australia. They weren't just for industrial use, they were household essentials. You'd use them to collect potatoes from the farm, carry shopping, store onions or grain, even as makeshift curtains or floor coverings. Kids used them for sack races at school carnivals. Farmers used them for everything from feed to fencing repairs. They were tough, reusable, and when they wore out, they became rags or compost. The Hessian bag was the original reusable bag, long before environmental movements made them fashionable again. When plastic bags and modern packaging arrived, Hessian bags became obsolete almost overnight. They're still around in some contexts, but the everyday, universal presence of Hessian bags, that rough texture, that earthy smell, that versatility that's gone. They've been forgotten, replaced by disposable convenience. Number 8. The Rabbit-O Man and fresh rabbits for dinner. In the 1950s, rabbit was a common, affordable meat, and the Rabbit-O Man would drive through suburbs calling out, "Rabbit-O." From his cart or van, he'd have fresh rabbits, already skinned and gutted, hanging from hooks, and housewives would come out to buy one for dinner. It was cheap protein, tasty when cooked properly, and a staple in working-class households. The Rabbit-O Man knew his route, knew his customers, and was part of the weekly routine. Kids would sometimes watch, fascinated and a bit horrified, as mums selected their rabbit and carried it home. When supermarkets started stocking a wider variety of meats and myxomatosis decimated rabbit populations, the Rabbit-O Man disappeared. Rabbit meat became less common, then rare, then almost forgotten. That call, Rabbit-O. Echoing down the street, it's a sound that's been lost to time, along with a whole way of buying and eating meat. Number 9. The telegram boy on his bike. Urgent news in the 1950s came via telegram, and it was delivered by a boy on a bicycle wearing a uniform and cap. You'd see him pedaling furiously down the street, and if he stopped at your house, your heart would skip. Telegrams meant something important, often something serious. Births, deaths, emergencies, urgent messages from overseas. The telegram boy would hand you the yellow envelope, wait for a signature, and pedal off to the next delivery. It was fast communication for its time, but it required a human messenger, a physical journey, a moment of anticipation as you tore open the envelope. Do you remember the mixture of dread and excitement when the telegram boy knocked on your door? When phones became universal and international calling improved, telegrams faded away, and the telegram boy became a relic, a memory, a forgotten piece of how information used to travel. Number 10. The coal man delivering fuel door to door. Before natural gas and electricity dominated, most Australian homes heated with coal, and the coal man was as regular a visitor as the milkman. He'd arrive with a truck loaded with Hessian sacks of coal, haul them on his back, and pour them down the coal chute into your cellar or storage area. The whole street would smell of coal dust, and kids would watch from windows as he worked, covered head to toe in black soot. You'd pay him weekly or monthly, and he'd keep a tally in a little book. The coal man was tough, uncomplaining, and essential. Without him, you froze in winter. When central heating and gas took over in the 60s and 70s, the coal man disappeared, and with him went a whole profession, a daily rhythm, and the particular smell and sound of coal being delivered that defined winter mornings. So there you have it, 10 forgotten things about 1950s Australia that we will never get back. Not the big moments or the famous events, but the small, everyday realities that shaped how people lived. The coal man, the telegram boy, the rabbit-o man, the cobbler, the iceman, these were real jobs, real people, real parts of daily life. And the rituals, the weekly bath, the Hessian bag, the street collections, these were how life was organized, how communities functioned, how people made do with less. We've gained so much since then: convenience, comfort, technology, abundance. But we've also lost things that mattered: the personal connections, the slower pace, the culture of repair, and most of all, the belief that the future would be better. These forgotten things aren't just quaint memories, they're windows into a different way of being, a different set of values, a different Australia. And remembering them, even if we can't bring them back, helps us understand what we've traded and what we've lost. What surprised you most about these forgotten things? And is there one you wish younger Australians could experience? This was Retro Australia, where the past is still alive.